We're at the Revenue Enhancement Committee meeting. Today is January 16, 2013. People at the attending is Monica Hamill, Dr. Otto, Michael Wolf, and Karen LeBlanc is in the public. All right, I wanted to discuss the activity fee options, and I had written down some other options underneath that. We're going to talk about school media follow-up, the Market Street sports follow-up, and the facilities use form processing fee discussion. I actually wanted to look at the activities fee. I was looking at all the different numbers, and I was trying to figure out ways to make the numbers balance out, and three options that I came up with working with the chart that we got for all the sports. And the only thing I could think of was increase the activities fee to help maintain all the programs. I just wrote these on my notes, Mike. You don't have them, but the other part was the middle school sports, separating them from the high school, and have another organization oversee middle school sports. But we still would have to increase the activities fee for the high school and activities at the school. And then the other option is still to eliminate all school activities, all student activities. I was trying to figure out different ways. I don't know if you sat down and looked at everything. I was looking at, I asked Miss Goss, Kathy, to put together a list of all the different types of activities that are in the school and how many kids participate in each activity.
Was that this one?
Yes. And there was it was 965. Hey. Hello, Andrew Basil just came in the room.
You started already?
Yes.
7:02.
You want me to recap what I just said?
No, just go ahead.
Okay. So I asked Ms. Goss to put numbers together to help me see a better picture of how many kids are actually in activities, so when we actually look at the breakdown of sports, that we had 965 high school and middle school students in activities and clubs. And then she broke it down into how many are in one activity, how many are in two activities, how many students are in clubs, how many are in clubs with no activity, and broke it down into how many families are capped at the current $500 cap, how many are reduced, how many free, how many fall band members there are, and how many winter percussion members there are. And I was taking those numbers and trying to figure out how to come up with our figure for each activity, and with raising the activities fee. That was one of the options that I had looked at, but the activities fee would actually be a very large number for them to sustain and maintain the programs.
Did you come up with a number that you thought,
a
range?
The range came between $850 and $1,500
per person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not, to me, that doesn't make much sense.
So, but also the alternative of not raising them at all is going to be, if we don't have enough money, we eliminate them.
Oh, no, I understand that.
So I'm trying to figure out where we can work with the figures. Once I put them all, once I broke everything out, if we took out the middle school athletics, that's $85,000 plus that would come out of that budget. If we took out the middle school activities, that would be $14,000 plus. So I was looking at the different ways to pull things out and push things in, and other than taking out, I wasn't paying attention in the beginning at the elementary band. I didn't realize that was actually in all these figures, but then that was part of the chunk of activity fee amounts. I was looking at that separately to see how to fund that. But I just wanted to get other input on has anyone...
Yeah, but I don't think we collected an elementary band fee.
No, we didn't do an
kids in elementary.
Right.
They have like a summer program or something, like a summer camp or something
but
like
that's
that, where people pay for.
Yeah, that's something they do on their own. But we've treated the elementary band as a curriculum part of the program, and it, as I've said before, the elementary band pull-out program, while it is, again, a very, it's an excellent program for teaching kids the skills they need for future band involvement, it's not required. But it's not treated as an extracurricular in the elementary because there really aren't what you would call elementary, outside of the yearbook program, the elementary yearbooks, there's really not much in the way of elementary extracurricular activities. So the elementary band's always been considered as just part of the music program, part of the music curriculum. And it can be, but it's not a Chapter 4 requirement. So if the district were to make the request for PDE to curtail that, it would probably be accepted. Well, as you know, they don't rule on them now. You just have to put the paperwork in place, and so I'm sure the curtailment of the elementary music program won't be an issue. It will be a decision for the board and administration once all of the other decisions are made as to whether or not that's on the chopping block or it stays.
Right. So I just took each activity and just trying to figure out where we could come up, and if we need to increase activity fee, where about it would be. And truly,
that's a pretty big number.
It is a big number
per person, anyway, and then that's per.
But
Or is that per activity?
It was per activity. Like if you have.
So if you had 2 students, that could go up to like $1,500 per activity.
Well, we would cap it at $1,500 is what I did.
Okay.
I capped it at $1,500, but we only had 8 families that were capped at $500. So it's 21 students capped at $500. I actually thought there would be a lot more families capped out at $500 than 8. So
This is last year?
this last year,
How many families are capped at 500?
8.
Do you have you shared that spreadsheet with everybody else?
Well, no, I just got this with here. It wasn't a spreadsheet. It was just I put in numbers here. Let me see.
This has the figures that
That
Michelle
goose-
Goss gave you of who's in what, what's been capped,
Yeah,
and
did
how
you-
many kids per each.
Right.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind sharing that with me, I'd appreciate it. I'd love to see that.
Oh,
I
I
don't have that information.
Okay, let me see if I can send it to you.
Send it to my Gmail account.
Okay.
Or actually, why don't you go on? I can find it.
Do you have it?
Yeah.
Okay, because I have to go back through.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
There's some. I guess I shouldn't think that she sends it to everybody.
Well, he's not on the, she sent it to
I'm
the
not on the
committee.
committee.
Oh,
But she sent it to me this morning, so I'll just forward it to
Okay.
him.
Was that in the information I got?
No, actually, that piece wasn't on. You want me to copy you then, because you have the sheet that I got.
yeah. All I did is I took the sheet that Dr. Otto gave you. I started working with the numbers and with the final
Explain now.
spreadsheet that showed to come to 0. I was taking the numbers that we had gotten to show what we were thinking about eliminating, and I started making my own numbers of how much we would have to max out or look at to get people to maintain the sports at its current level.
You should
But
have it now. It's on its way.
Got it.
298 students are
You
in
can
one
keep the
activity.
paper copy for now.
So
Oh, is that your phone?
Did you get it yet? Okay.
Gmail takes a little while to process it.
So if there was 298 students that did one activity, my thought was that we need to kind of front load the cost so that the first activity, if you're going to participate in it, you would have to pay quite a bit of money. This was taking into account middle school. Now, if we take middle school out, that might readjust itself. It would readjust. But it was just if we kept everything the same, what would we have to charge? And I haven't gone through this with Mrs. Penza yet. I brought it up to her, but she said we would have to really work with the numbers in the end to see what the final cost would be. But it certainly was a lot higher than what we currently charge. But last time there was a gentleman here who said that he was paying like $600 or more to just to have his kids do club sports, and he still had to cart them all over the place. And that was one of his things, was he was actually looking forward to having his kids in more organized sports to eliminate some of his running around. And at that time, he thought even $1,000 was going to be something that he would anticipate paying. And so I kind of took that and thought, well, I wonder what what's the cost might be. I know some of the parents, if their kids are seniors and they're going to be in sports, they would probably pay a higher fee to finish out the school year, the school. Middle schoolers, I think, is a different story, where they still have maybe 3 to 7 more, they have 7 more years of school. So are their parents going to be able to afford $1,000 a year for each one of their children to participate in sports?
Yeah, I think you're going to hit a tipping point where some of those fees become prohibitive for many families.
Yeah, you saw that in the budget last year, where the anticipated revenue was, I want to say like 135,000, based on the numbers of this participation the previous
Prior
years.
years.
Right.
And what happened is we actually netted less because less people participated in these extracurriculars, and as such, the money just wasn't there. And I think, I think you're going to get to that point, just like Dr. Otto said, that their cost will be prohibitive, or instead of going out for 2 sports, or 2 activities, they'll just pick one. So you're winding up.
I think at some point you could. I think what'll happen, just from a mathematical standpoint, is what he just said. You'll see less participation, so the revenue won't go where you think it's going to go. And I don't. That's not a good, bad, or indifferent comment. That's just really just a numbers comment.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I was just looking at the numbers and saying, okay, where are we going to take this? How are we going to maintain and keep our activities currently how they are? And this is what I was coming up with, knowing that, yes, this is really an expensive sport now, regardless of what sport you're playing. So that was why I had the different. I worked with, let me see where the other one is. So that was if to increase the activity fee to maintain the way the programs are running now. If we start to branch out and maybe get rid of the middle school sports and programs, and have another organization take over those sports, that would at least take away some of the burden on our budget and still allow to have kids have activities. So I'm just trying to think of ways to keep the kids involved without losing everything altogether.
Well, I think you have to also carve out the activities, since they're really contractual and they're going to present kind of, I think, a little bit of a labor problem if you try to take an outside group and do what should be contractually done in-house. Sports, I think you might be okay with that. The in-house activities might cause a little bit of a problem. That's just a question that would have to get answered legally. So that's something we'd have to look at.
You mean like the clubs, just hosting them outside?
Right.
Well, I mean, I was thinking
Or
more
having,
like the way
you're subcontracting that work then.
Right.
That subcontracting issue is a tough one to get around sometimes.
Well, I was trying to think of the way lacrosse runs and tennis runs. How does that work?
Well,
I mean, if
there were agreements already for those. They were never in. But it's when you have things that are already in and then you try to go around them, you're going to open up a can of worms with subcontracting. That's just my opinion. I can certainly verify that with Brian Supers, but I think you're going to run into some trouble. See, when we took in lacrosse, we just endorsed it. We didn't take it in. We gave it our name. It's basically just name recognition. It's totally funded outside. I believe, is tennis the same way?
Yes.
So tennis is the same way too. So they're only Daniel Boone really by name, and then because they're using our name, obviously the kids have to follow the rules and PIAA, et cetera, et cetera. But we're not paying anything for that.
Right. Well, can't we do that with middle school? Like, why can't?
You can probably do it with anything. I'm just saying that if you do it for the activities in the school, because those are all contractual positions already in the contract. If you try to work with them outside of the realm of the school and outside of the contract, we'd have to get a legal interpretation to make sure that's okay. Because
you would almost have to
territory.
Right. So my thought was the coach can't go with them to the new club. They might have to just end that.
You'd almost, and I would think the district would just have to sever its responsibility and thereby remove them from the contract, and then they'd have to come back as they would be able to be funded. Because you couldn't, right now, every coach is hired, the salary that a coach is paid based on the contract. Mm-hmm. So there's a connection to the district's contract with the teachers union for all of these activities. So if there's going to be any connection to it, and if a person that's an independent coach, that somebody's out there that's doing it, we still pay them based on what the contracted. We don't. In other words, we don't go out and negotiate with, like Bill Parks, for example. He comes in, he follows as though he were teaching here. That's the way he is paid. Mm-hmm. He's the first year, so many points, so much experience, whatever we give him, and then we compute a salary based on the contract. If we don't have it, we don't have that say. Then somebody else just says, well, we're going to pay you. So let's just say before it was $2,000. Well, when you do it for us, this is what we're paying you, and then the district would have no real input in that.
Well, it's just a matter of if that's possible to take some of the burden off of the entire district. I think it's something we ought to use to look into. Like, we should try to look into it, because I just don't. Like you said, the cost is prohibitive the way that I have it set up for an activity.
The other thing that may happen is if the district does away with athletics, you can play whatever sports. You don't have to have, like, in other words, the only thing that you have to have is one male sport to balance a female sport. So maybe in the fall you have two sports. You know, you have, like, let's say you have football, that would be it. Then you need a girls' sport to balance it off, and you're done. You don't have to have cross country. You don't have to have golf. You don't have. A lot of schools don't have certain programs now. So when you run a sports program, it doesn't have to mean that you have 15 sports. Right. There's no stipulation. First of all, there's no stipulation you even have to have a sports program. And then beyond that, there's no stipulation if you do have one, what sports you have to include. Some schools have swimming. Some don't, because they don't have a pool.
By participants, or is it by
just by what you would could afford to do?
What I'm saying is that the football team generally has 45 players.
Right. Well, you need to field a certain.
The women's lacrosse maybe has 20. Is that comparable?
Is that equal?
Yeah, I think as long as there's an opportunity to participate in a sport, you're okay.
But I just thought it'd be nicer if the district didn't just say, okay, you're on your own now. We only have two sports. Here you go, without having a transitional period to show them that, okay, maybe we can't afford all this, but here's your alternative. Here's what we are doing to help you. I'm
brainstorming. I'm not putting a plan on the table. I'm just surmising that there could be a lot of different scenarios that.
Right. I only have 3 down here, and that was why. These were through my brainstorming, trying to figure out how to make something work without getting rid of eliminating everything. I just. Eliminating everything just doesn't.
And that ultimately may not be what has to be done, but as it stands right now, that's the discussion.
I guess from a financial standpoint,
Well, when you look at the bottom line, when you look at the total cost of running an athletics program, it's generally not. You're not going to do the type of fundraising activities that we do in the community now and run the sports program. Nobody's going to raise $455,000 by selling hoagies and by selling pizzas, and that's just not going to happen. That's just, and it could magically happen, but I wouldn't hold my breath waiting for that to happen.
Well, maybe we could have like a team, like all the teams get together and do like one big event or something, rather than a lot of little events.
That might
be something
I think that's a great idea. It just comes down to how much money you think you're going to raise by doing that. High school and a district activities program, as you've seen from what we've posted in the budget on an annual basis, is a major expense when you take it in its entirety. It's not $2,500. It's over $500,000 all in. That's a lot of money.
2 years ago, the Music Boosters put on a 5K over here at the Homestead, and they did really well the first year. And then the second year, you saw pop, 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 pop. Everyone has their own little 5K, 10K. They have like variations of it. And what happened was, the participation went down. So, because everybody's out there doing that. So I think coming up with one big event, I think it's going to be difficult. Plus, you always have the problem of, all right, yeah, great, who's going to do it? It's a great idea, but how do we get it done? Who's going to pick up the ball and run with it?
And the other part of it is I think there's a finite amount of money to go around. People they're getting spread thin with all the other commitments that they have for their money. It was interesting when we get to that part in it, but I talked to this guy from Market Street today, and he said, it's all well and good. Our plan is, he says, but to be quite honest with you, since the economy tanked, you don't have advertisers out there that want to get into this because they're not really getting the return on their money. So it's a very, very difficult, as we've seen, financial climate that nobody wants to part with a dollar right now for anything, advertising, anything. So I don't know that there's an easy way around this.
Well, I don't think there is an easy way around it. I don't know, it just frustrates me because I don't want to see anything go.
Well, I don't think anybody wants to see anything go, and maybe ultimately we'll find a solution to it. I don't know what that solution is. Even with the things that we've talked about in the budget, using fund balance, taxes, et cetera, cuts, this, that, and the other thing. The puzzle's still in the box. We don't have the puzzle put together on the table yet.
Right. So. Are people opposed to having other organizations try to help do middle school?
I'm not. I don't have any opposition to anything right now. My mind's open to whatever we can do. I want to make sure whatever we put on the table, that it's talked through and analyzed properly, so as not to give people false hope and mislead them to think that, as I just said, that there is an easy answer, or that there's some divining rod that we can point at something and conjure up $600,000. Because I don't think that's fair. Because I don't think that reality is there.
I think people generally recognize Amity AC is a great organization. They're well organized. Could they handle something like that? I think they could. I think generally, and I don't know how the sports people in general feel about it, but I think they would agree that they probably could take on the responsibility of that. So I don't know, in my opinion, that would be a big deal, for someone to take it out of the school district and put it into the hands of a private entity, as long as they're getting the same product, really.
Do you see that just for you want a high school and middle school?
No, I'm just talking about middle school.
Middle school?
Right.
Okay. Do you have the same feeling for high school?
I don't see why not.
I think if
it's just bigger than, then you have to wonder then, all right, how much does that stretch their resources?
And I would say, based again, I don't think the cost of running the program is going to change no matter who takes it and runs with it. Whether it's endorsed by Amity AC, whether it's the sports boosters, whether it's some unknown entity that we don't have. It's going to cost what it costs. You can economize a little bit, and maybe you don't need an athletic facilitator. Maybe you find another way to organize it. But you got to pay coaches. You got to pay transportation. You got to buy supplies. You got to pay fees. All of those things are going to be there, no matter who runs it. Somebody's going to have to pay that money, and it's probably going to wind up being the user. So the fee that you just quoted there, that it might wind up being, they might be able to say, because now this is private, the coaches aren't going to make as much. People aren't going to coach for nothing. You might get away with maybe 80% of what you're paying them now, 70%, somewhere in there. Because at some point it becomes counterproductive for someone to come out and dedicate their time and basically cover their own. After taxes, they're getting 10 cents an hour. So I think you have to realize that if it goes off into some other entity, we lose it. That's fine. We lost some 500. Let's just say $500,000 is gone from our budget. I don't think you can assume that the same activities are going to be available out on the free market and that everything's going to come back the way it looked before, especially if you're going to have to pay $1,000 a kid for each activity. I'm just being realistic. This is a lot of cold reality. So if that's the way it's going to have to be.
I'd be curious to.
Comments from the public?
I'd take comments, yeah. Anybody want it? I mean,
I was just going to say, if you look at the cost, if you just take middle school.
And I'm just thinking out loud here.
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
I don't.
I'm just looking at middle school sports, for example, and 80% of the cost of one of these programs is salary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stipend, Social Security, and retirement benefits. So, I mean, I'm just looking at middle school softball, for example. It's that's an $11,660 sport. Of that, $8,000 is the stipend and the benefits.
Oh, yeah, I don't have that. That's upstairs.
So from $11,000 sport, you're going, $8,000 of that $6,100 is the stipend. Then you have Social Security of $640, retirement of $1,400. Most of that is tied up in that. So if there's an outside organization, they can hire a head coach or an assistant coach and just pay them a flat rate, whatever that, I don't know what the market rate might be. Let's say it's $2,000 or $1,500. You just literally have that cost. So instead of that program costing $11,600, that program might cost only, $6,000 or $7,000, and maybe that's a little bit more palatable over 21, 30 students or something like that may be playing that sport. It gets to be a little bit more affordable.
well, it'd be more affordable for most parents if you break it out, because the way I did it was I broke it out and did each sport according to how many students played each sport, and if you broke it down to maybe fairness, it'd be you pay what that sport is that it costs. Like some of these only cost $380 or $320, and other sports cost $587, depending on the sport. Or that'd be per student. So if they pay it as they go, you're still looking at, if you do two sports, depending on which sports, you could be paying anywhere from $580 to this one here is $662. So
I guess my point was that if it's an outside organization that's running the activity, they don't have the same contractual obligations the school district does. As a result, the overall cost could drop significantly per sport. So,
Well,
however you decide you're going to
Right.
charge a fee for it.
I think what happens.
I'd want to see what it would outside sport would cost.
Well, but the other thing that would happen is because if you try to, it's like I said, there's a universe of costs. So if a club's saying, if you don't mind, I'll just say Amity AC. If you don't mind me saying that, Karen, I'm not making any, assumption that you would ever do this or your organization would. But let me just, for conversation, if they do it, the cost of transportation is now, you're not going to run buses.
No.
People are going to have, that cost is going to be borne by somebody. So it's no longer in the formula, but somebody's paying it.
Well, the participants are still going to have to fund.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
My point is, all of that money, that pot of money that I just described, minus some of the stuff that you might not have to worry about anymore, Social Security, some of the contractual benefits that you're locked into disappear. But some of those are offset by the fact we're picking up the transportation bill. The activity fee's helping to offset that, but now suddenly, if you're going to go to Octorara for a soccer game, well, you're going to fill your gas tank to go do that.
Well, what we do with lacrosse is we still get buses, but they pay for it.
But however, maybe you'll contract with Klein and Rhodes. Maybe parents will start the caravan and they'll decide to do creative things. But they're not going to do them for free.
No.
That's my point. And I don't know that once it leaves our hands, we have a way of computing what that cost is going to be.
They fundraise to do that. Lacrosse fundraisers. They make a lot of money for fundraisers.
They're completely self-sufficient. They can do it. Why can't all the other sports do it?
Because we're all pulling from the same pot.
Eventually,
That's the problem.
I think that's okay and lacrosse is a rather unique group. They're kind of a niche. I'll bet you a lot of those kids don't do too much else.
Yeah, they do.
Well, some of them do, some of them don't.
There's a very strong parent base in lacrosse.
But there some, and I think a lot of sports are that way. Football has obviously always got a very big following of parents, and I've seen football organizations with their spaghetti dinners and their fundraisers and their golf outings, and they raise a lot of money. But then you get your no offense, maybe your girls' soccer's fundraising efforts aren't going to be as strong. Maybe your, boys wrestling isn't going. I mean, that's kind of strong, but you start to have a diminished crowd. So football has 60 families that are involved. So you multiply that times 2 and 3, suddenly you have an army of 250 people that can go out and fundraise. A wrestling team has 14 kids. So your army there's 40 people, and you're done. I used to coach wrestling, so I know you don't have this big. You have a small group of dedicated people. So I guess all I'm trying to put out there is a lot of the things that would look a lot different, and the realities that would occur. I mean, but again, I'm not saying they shouldn't or couldn't or won't happen. I just think we're having conversation here, so I think it's important to put it on the table.
I have a question. I have the expense report for all the sports. Where does the ticket money income go?
Right now, I mean, I don't,
Goes into the general fund.
the money that comes in for
So
all.
that's
Into
not-
the athletic
say
fund.
Football
Well,
brings in
so-
22,000.
Well, what-
baseball
We
brings
just
in-
count that as revenue.
In
That
the
doesn't,
past,
that doesn't get applied to offset the cost
it
of that
does.
sport?
Well, no.
Oh, and
That's specific.
not specific to the whole sports program.
So what we did was, in the past, the school district, for example, gave free physicals.
It's like
right?
Penn
And
State
in
football
the
helps
past.
pay for everything
And
else.
we also, ticket sales were whatever they were. And so we increased the price per ticket, and we started charging for the physicals. And as a result, there was suddenly income, okay? That income, in addition to the activity fee, provided a certain amount of revenue to the school districts, around 190-something thousand. I
Well,
can tell you what it is.
I have the gate receipts for 2012, 2013.
About, let's see, the activity fees and the physicals and the ticket sales, we were estimating around almost $200,000.
And that went into the general fund.
And that, well, it went in the general fund, but we're also paying $600,000 out for
That's right,
activities and extracurriculars and everything else. So $200,000 in, $600,000 out, we have a $400,000 nut in between that the school district is obviously still funding from taxpayer dollars. And so that's what's literally at risk here is that, okay, look, with this $5 million deficit, one way of doing that is you get rid of all activities, you have another $400,000 at our disposal to pay for the contractual obligations that we have that are coming up. So,
But you also lose the revenue.
well, that's what I'm saying. It's a $400,000 nut. $600,000 savings, $200,000 loss of revenue is a $400,000 net cost to the district. That is.
It's actually just short of $700,000 all in.
Yeah. So,
685 is ringing in my head for
But
some
then you
reason.
have to, you
Oh,
still
yeah,
have to
that's
take those other things out. You're 685 all in, but you still have to, I realize from an accounting point, if the general fund is different from the athletics, but you're still subtracting that, so you're at 450, 450.
The real number is the net number.
Right, the net number.
yeah, that's the net number.
But when we do the math to show the budget problem we have, you have to use that 600.
Well, and we're also using the 100 or 200 on the revenue side.
That's what I meant.
The loss of revenue.
Right.
You have to have it on both sides of the equation. I mean, middle school sports is costing us about $95,000.
Do you know exactly what transportation, like what's the transportation fee?
They're all
Per
different.
sport, it's about $1,000.
We don't have the sheet here. We actually have done all this homework.
I
Right.
have one here, and I know from my experience that it's different for each sport, for each event, the transportation. You can't
I
say
think didn't we post,
transportation.
we had that
Have it,
conversation. I
have
think we
it.
posted that out there.
Here
Well,
it
you know,
is.
I'm looking
What
at
was that email I
With all
saw
the
with
sports.
all
We
the
broke it down
sports
for
club-
sports, about
sports broken down?
$1,000.
What was that?
Some are
What was that
900,
for
some are
something?
1,200.
This is called, it's called the breakdown by sport.
No, he wanted to know what it was attached to.
Yeah, what was it attached to?
Per sport.
It's
I'll look
an
for it.
email.
Average 1,000.
I'll look
I know I
for
have
it.
it.
Well,
I just
here's one,
filed
girls
it
basketball
now.
is 2,700.
I know, but
I have it on my computer.
golf is 1,300.
Who sent it out, Danielle?
Yeah,
Or is it
Danielle.
Another one
and-
might be.
Let me see if I can find
I don't know, I
$900.
pull all my attachments off right away.
Some of them are in the 25.
I do too, but I think it might be easy for me to,
1,500 per sport,
I'll just,
There's a,
7,500 for football.
you'd probably have more buses, with
Right.
more kids. You might have
Cheerleaders.
4 or 5 buses going to each.
I don't know about 4 or 5, but there's more buses for football. Exactly,
Football
Right.
brings in
by far.
$20,000 or whatever it is in ticket sales.
Mhm.
No one can get close to football's revenue.
No. Do you guys have any idea, did Sports Boosters ever do a study of which sports bring in what for gate receipts? Has anyone ever
No,
looked at
because we don't
that?
get the gate receipts.
Has
The
anyone
school
ever
board
looked at
gets-
that?
Yeah.
the school gets
Yeah.
gate receipts.
Yeah, I have gate
I
receipts.
think it's 60,000.
Yeah, we've crunched all these
Like,
numbers.
Which sport
Per
brings it?
sport.
Yeah, per
Yes,
sport, just to get
I
an
have
idea,
that.
To have that
I think
information.
football's
I
about
do.
$20,000 on average.
As of right now, they had, the boys soccer had $2,626 in September, $1,008 in October. I mean, September and October, add those two, so. Football brought in $13,432 in September, $12,007 in October, and $6,150 in November.
For sports like, I would imagine sports like golf and cross country.
They don't charge.
Here, I think I found it.
Drive around
Sports
a
are
mile.
like
Yeah.
football, field hockey, girls volleyball.
Here's one
boys
that's the
soccer,
breakdown by activity. Is that the one you're looking for?
Wrestling,
It was called the
and
breakdown
girls and boys basketball.
for REC, is that it?
Is this it? Breakdown, this is the one he's looking for.
Mm-mm.
That's all I have, the
I'm just
one
curious.
for all the clubs and
Out of
All right,
activities.
curiosity,
okay.
have you looked at, if we lose a sports program from this district, what it does to our property value? I don't know who would move into
I think I
this
found it,
district not having any sports if you had children. If you have no sports, no clubs, you have to think about the ramifications for college. Our property values have got to go down, if you, especially, and if you throw losing kindergarten in there,
This isn't, I hear what you're saying, from as far as I'm concerned, it's not even it's, our hand is being forced on these decisions. So it's not like we're saying, yeah, sports and band, that's
I
not a
can't
great
find
thing
it.
to cut. It's,
See if I can send
what is within our discretionary power to balance the budget? And this is one of
Yeah.
those things.
Oh,
So
here it is, I think.
understand that, but
it's not a question of want, it's a question of have to. And on the other side, the equation, we have taxes that are pushing, over 30 mils, and not including county and township taxes.
something else I
So
was
that
looking
puts
for.
them over 40 mils
Mm.
for most people. And then you're talking about another increase beyond that. So, who's going to buy in Daniel Boone Area School District when they go right across to 562 into Boyertown and pay a third of the taxes they're paying here and have sports programs? I mean, it's a combination, double whammy. Those people live up near Woods Edge. If you're trying to sell your house, well, you're going to have a hard time selling it against, somebody who's in a Greff development right across the street, right? Easier to buy that other house if the taxes are $3,000 or $4,000 a year less. And they've got other resources. So it's a bad situation all around.
I can't find it.
But, at the end of the day, unless there's another way to find revenue for these programs, or another way to provide these programs that's not on the school district dollar, I'm not sure what we can do. I mean, it's the same situation for kindergarten. We may be forced to jettison that program as well, not because we want to, but because, quite frankly, we have no alternative. That's why I'm kind of hopeful that, if Amity Athletics is able to take over part or all of the program and say, okay, well, look, we can do this. The difference, I think, is that an outside organization doesn't have the contractual constraints that we have to operate under. And as I just mentioned before, it's the stipends that are the biggest expense items as part of these sports. And that's not dictated by experience, it's not dictated by the quality of the coach, it's not dictated by anything else other than a teacher's contract that we have. And that contract says that, as Dr. Otto explained, you're in this school district and you've been here for X number of years, this is what you get paid, regardless of whether you're a good coach, bad coach. You know, you got 40 years of coaching under your belt, or you got 5. This is the number that you get for being a teacher of X number of years in the school district.
How do you base the salaries for coaches that are not employees of the school district, they're not teachers?
We treat them as if they were.
And how do you do that?
Because there's a memorandum of understanding that if you coach here, you can't just come in and negotiate your own contract. You have to be paid under
You
the...
have so many years credit?
Yeah, there's a formula. There's a
That's what I
formula.
was curious about.
I mean, I'll if you want to see it, I'll bring it to tomorrow's meeting. But it's just a formula-based system that, and it does factor in experience and, you know,
I was just curious.
there's a point system, but it makes sense. It's just that's the way it works.
Huh? We'll look at the stipend. $6,100.
Well, and that softball coach has probably been around.
Andrew, what attachment is that? What email was that attached to?
That I'm looking at.
Yeah, I know I have it, I just can't find it.
Yeah, I'm
I
not,
have it on my work computer, but it doesn't help.
I can't
I
locate
can give
it.
you the date that it was sent out.
Let me see if I can just send it to you.
But when you look at the expense, Karen, when you look at the expense of coaches, if you've got a coach here 20 years, they're making good money.
Oh, absolutely.
For at least is compared to other
So I'm
coaches.
just curious
From
about the
Danielle.
outside coaches, how their salaries are based.
And
Same thing. If Bill Parks were to be here 20 years, in 20 years he'd probably be making $12,000, $13,000 just for coaching.
What if it's a coach just coming in?
Well, then they start at the formula is such that you make the least you're ever going to make your first year.
Which is like 2,000 or something.
Whatever it is. I mean, I don't have that in
You
front
also
of
have to
me.
understand, we have to add into that not only Social Security, but the Teaser's contribution rate too towards retirement. And with Max
Did you
going
get
up
it yet, Mike?
at an
I
exponential
found a
rate. in the
budget
school
document
district.
that
So,
she sent over.
you know, that's my point.
I'll send you
is
all the stuff
that
I have and you can read it.
You guys maybe say, well, look, in the marketplace.
I'm gonna see if I saved
if
it.
we're going
Mark.
to hire a coach, if we pay a coach, pick a number, $1,500, that's what
Well,
we
we've
pay.
crunched all these
There's
numbers.
no benefits, there's no Social Security contribution, there's nothing else. That's the number, $1,500. Whereas for us, hiring that same person may cost us
Oh, here I have them all.
$700.
You
Wait
got
a
it?
minute. Yeah, I think I
Just
did
because
save them.
we have
Let
to
me see
treat
if I
them
can
as if
find
they
them.
were an employee of the district, you know, as part of the teacher.
But I don't have the
contract.
one that looks like the
Pay
one
for
you
their
have
stipends,
there.
and
I
pay
can't
for
find
Social
it.
Security
No, I have
benefits
it. You don't have to
and
send
the
it
whole
to me.
9 yards. And
No,
so
I'll
it's a
send
much
every-
more
I'll just
expensive
send it all to
proposition
Mike.
For us to hire the same person as
sorry.
somebody else might.
That's
be.
all right.
I know I have it somewhere,
But you would get the same
but I
person.
filed it so
Huh?
great.
Same
it
person
can't
who's
come.
going to work for that amount, it's not going to work for 1,500. Now we're going to wind up with parents.
You never know that though, right? You get, what are the
Really?
well, what are the lacrosse people paying
Did
for
we
their
really
coach?
not know this?
1,500.
They're paying $1,500 for a lacrosse coach. We couldn't hire a lacrosse coach for $1,500 to save our lives. Minimum, it cost us $3,000 or $4,000 to have a coach
And that's the
here.
first, and he got, his pay was the first time, the first 4 years he coached gratis.
He didn't pay him anything for the first 4 years.
The tennis coach does not get paid.
He hasn't been here for 5 years.
The first coach. The first coach
lacrosse
didn't get paid.
coach.
He did not get paid for 4 years.
Okay, because Matt hasn't been here. This is second.
And the tennis coach does not
It
get paid.
wouldn't
He
take
does it gratis
much.
because he wants to do the program.
Did you
I'm
get
not
it yet?
saying every coach is going to do it for
See, this is the breakdown. This one?
Yeah, I have this
It's the
one.
breakdown of sports,
Yeah.
REC.
It's going to be a lot more affordable. for
9,
parents
12,
I mean,
19.
12,
So
12,
last
19,
month.
yeah.
somewhere else.
I'll find it. I'll find it. If that's the date, then I'll find
Yeah,
it.
that's what,
That helps.
With no test.
We're not making any suggestions that's what we're going to do. I'm just saying that we have the NDAC stepping forward saying, look, we can help you guys. And, you know, if we can make this nut smaller and we start off with one thing and we see how it goes, maybe that's the first step. I don't know. I mean, that's what we're trying to figure out. Maybe it's a combination of NDAC taking some things, we raise our activity fees, we do something else. Maybe the teachers come forward with a concession. They say, well, you know what? We're okay with not taking stipends, or we're okay with reducing something else. We don't know. I mean, no one's stepped forward from our contractual side of the table to say we're willing to do something yet. So, you know, we do need a plan B though, right? I mean, because at the end of the year, we want to be in May or June, and nobody stepped forward to help us out, and now we're stuck with just axing everything.
Nothing.
We'd rather have a plan in place and say, okay, look, this is what we're going to do. We can communicate that to parents. Everybody understands what's happening and what those costs may or may not be. And if something changes to the better, great. I mean, it's just, it's better for everybody.
So is there a number that you're shooting for? You know what I mean? Like,
$454,000.
well, yeah, I know that. I know that would be wonderful. That's the number we're shooting for. Is there another number that would make it more palatable?
I mean, just so you understand, in terms of our overall budget, $5 million deficit, they came to the table with suggestions of balancing that budget. So we only have so many levers. One lever, maximum tax increase. We've pulled that one, okay? Second lever is use of fund balance. Well, we're using in this formula $1.4 million out of our fund balance to plug the hole. The other one was cuts, okay? And they proposed cuts. It's athletics, it's middle school, it's administrative personnel, so on and so forth. There's a whole laundry list of cuts which equal $2.6 million.
And let me editorialize here. We gave them cuts that we know we can make.
Right.
We can do these things.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not giving you, we're going to eliminate third grade.
Right.
I can't do that.
Right.
So those are the 3 of the 4 levers we have. The fourth lever is some sort of contractual concession. Okay. Now, as part of the assumptions that were made,
I can't find I have it.
we made assumptions that teachers weren't going to give us anything. Our Act 93 group was going to get their maximum, which is our administrative personnel, get their maximum raise. We painted the worst case scenario. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done between now and June. Meeting with the different employees and stakeholders of the district and saying, okay, are you guys willing to take less? Instead of 5%, we take 4, we take 3, we take nothing. We don't know what they'll say. We're talking about closing down a building. We have to go through that process. Maybe that takes some of the burden off of some of these things. I think, that will be the discussion the board has. I mean, if there are funds saved there, where do those funds go first?
And I just, for the record, and we have press here, the closing of the building would be a discussion if we didn't have to raise taxes. Because that building, that floor plan, the space in that building needs to be looked at. And whether if times were good or bad, why wouldn't you want to save money if you can economize your program? So while it looks like it's being done as part of a budget program, it's being done because our enrollment's going down. That's not a function of the economy. That's a function of we're losing bodies. They're not here. So I just want to say that.
The enrollment projections for the next 5 or 10 years. And it has been going.
Well, they're flat.
Continue to go down. Yeah, they're absolutely flat.
Well, they're not only flat, they're negative. They're negative.
They really are.
I have one question. If Amity AC, I'm just getting back to the, wanted to take over, say, middle school sports, how would that happen? I mean, what type of things has to be put into place to make that happen? Or is it too early?
Well, this is what I'll let me just step in. I think what would have to happen procedurally, process-wise, is the district would have to divest itself and say, we're done. And then it's up to them how they want to do it.
Is that how?
Yeah, the school district would have to eliminate middle school sports.
We just have to cut it and say, we're not doing this. And then, in its absence, they would bring it back as they see fit. We would just, the only thing that we would do is, and Andrew, you're always good with this, is if you're using our name, PIAA rules aren't going to go away.
No,
you know what I mean? All that stuff's not going to go away.
That's what I wanted to know.
With
still?
the athletics themselves, nothing would change. They would still be Daniel Boone teams.
Okay.
They would still be playing PIAA sports. We would not plan on eliminating coaches if they could be financed. And it's going to be for the participants to finance.
We might even get into a cooperative arrangement where, and again, I'm just brainstorming, so I just want to preface that for the tape. Maybe you still need an athletic administrator.
Absolutely.
Maybe the person that is doing that is half funded by us now and half funded by the fees that the parents pay to you, and we work out a new employment arrangement with that person. So let's just say for conversation purposes, it's Goose. Maybe half of Goose's salary comes from us, half comes from them. I don't know. We're looking to reduce our costs and maintain a program. We're trying to think out of the box. I hate that cliche, but that's what we're trying to do.
I'm trying to figure that out.
I believe Michelle was going to reach out to see if DBYS, Boys or Mat Club, and midget football would pick up their sports. And if not,
DBYC is who would take the biggest
Is that
problem.
DBYC?
Yeah, because
Okay.
the next, at that level, that's who they would
Right,
play
okay.
for. DBYS ends, DBYC
Right.
steps in.
And I
I'm sure there are some legal arrangements we're going to have to clarify with PIAA in the fact that the school district's, quote, not funding it, but if you're still, and how you sanction it and still get to, because ultimately for every sport, everybody wants to go to, quote, their Super Bowl, which means they want to win a state championship.
And that's very important.
So you'd have to make sure that PIAA, whatever our relationship with them, no matter where the money comes from, that remains
Right,
intact.
because and that's why it's very important that they still remain Daniel Boone.
And that's a question I haven't researched yet, but we, rest assured, we'll have that answer.
And I think the main difference is, instead of the school, what my viewpoint and what our viewpoint is that instead of the school funding the athletics, the parents would be funding the athletics, or the participants would funding the athletics through either, fees, fundraising, whatever, through us.
Okay.
But they would still be Daniel Boone teams, with the Daniel Boone coaches, with the Daniel Boone uniforms. That would not change. Our intention would never be to change that. We already have club sports. These kids are already playing club sports.
Right.
Yeah, and I doubt,
They do
They don't want to
both.
play two club sports. They want to play
Right.
club and school. And it would still be school teams. Our intent is to make sure that these kids still have school sports.
So insurance would be through LEAC,
Right.
if it's whatever.
and again, maybe the insurance is something the district continues to fund.
Well, I think we would have to if they're going to use our facility.
Right.
Okay.
So maybe that would continue,
Currently,
that would continue to be our overhead cost.
Well, I think,
Well, I mean, that semi-pro team, they use the stadium too, but they pay their own insurance.
yeah, but I think.
But they're not connected to us at
I
all.
think what we have to do is we'd have to have.
They're not using our
obviously, we have
kids or-
P&L, policy, and
And
on
we
that
have one as
policy,
well.
we have,
Currently,
right
we
now,
insure the school. The school is one of our insureds already because our teams play.
and I'm sure that we would
On
be,
the facilities.
we'd have them as an additional insured on our.
And you could put riders on your insurance
Right, we do,
policies
yeah.
for other organizations to use. I think we do that
In
now.
terms of the point you made with like a leasing fee or something else, I mean, I think that may be one way to skin the cat in terms of if we have an athletic facilitator and a personal trainer, not a personal trainer,
Athletic.
The athletic
the
trainer.
athletic trainer, it has to be at each game
Right.
because that's a requirement. And, all these other things, maybe that becomes a way of saying, okay, well, look, we need to charge MDAC a fee to use our field so we can provide these services to you, all right? And that's just built into the cost of the sport.
Trust me, my goal is that Michelle and Bob and Kathy just don't go in.
Right, so that way those employees are here
No one's
to
prepared
keep
to do
the,
it.
to keep the school interscholastic games the way they always have been. Or maybe it's something the school district continues to fund if we find a way to breach this gap. I mean, I think the first thing we need to work on is a way to fund all of it, is Plan A, and B, pieces of that thereafter. Because if we do find funds, or there are concessions, or who knows what, then we may not need to fund all of sports. We may only need to fund another portion of it beyond what we are currently funding. And so I think that's where we have to sort of start, is how much can we take off our plate so that those things stay? And then beyond that, it's easy to bring them back. Right?
Because they won't
That's
be
the easy
leaving,
part.
the teams won't be leaving.
Well, like, here,
Yeah.
I know you say it's very easy to bring them back, but things rarely come back
They don't
once
come
they
back.
disappear, honestly.
Well, we've added lacrosse, and we've added tennis, right?
Well, you've added it,
True.
but
Which
team
is
only.
weird.
Yeah.
Team only, but
Which is
it's-
team only, you added them.
Well, if we
They didn't come
maybe,
into your
well, I'm just
budget.
saying,
Yeah.
that maybe in 2016, when we have a different type of contract, employment contract in place, we can address some of the problems that our current
Don't worry, because
contract
girls lacrosse is coming
creates for
next.
us.
I
You
think
know what
this
I'm
is
saying?
last breath I say.
So,
Don't we have to offer girls lacrosse?
We do
No.
have girls lacrosse.
No.
We do
Oh,
not
we
have
have boys
girls-
lacrosse, don't you have to have
It's not-
an equal?
You could balance it
Not
off with
part of-
another, doesn't have to be an identical
Field
sport.
hockey.
Yeah, you feel happy,
Got it.
but, we have the interest, we need a coach.
Karen, you have free time.
Well, lacrosse,
I was out talking with some of the people at this weekend's event, trying to get a feel for what they would accept as far as an increase in the activity fee. And I had talked to 19 parents, and 11 of them were sports, or there was a hybrid factor where they did sports and other things too. And several of them like, well, if you only had a girls lacrosse team, I'm like, I didn't even know we had one. Oh, we don't. There's a lot of interest.
There's a lot of interest. I have 40 girls lined up that want to play lacrosse. This is not a coach. We can't find. I mean, in other words, we're avoiding, we're digressing off the topic, but that'll be coming.
Well, it's all really part of the same topic, though.
But getting
What
back to
what
did
did
they
you
feel
find
comfortable?
Yeah,
that-
that's what, yeah.
what I got, and this is obviously 19 people out of, so it's anecdotal at best, but 10 wouldn't accept anything over and above the $150 first time activity fee. 5 said they would pay up an additional 100 to make it 250. 3 said they would accept 300, but then they would not allow our student to take anything else. That would be it. That would be their one and only. And one person said they go up as high as $500. And it's the same caveat, where that would be their only activity.
So I think the markup would actually vary quite a bit. You could probably go up another $100 from the people that
I think so
I've
too.
spoken to.
I think so too.
I have 3
think-
sons.
Yeah.
I all play school sports. They also play club teams.
Yeah.
I spend a fortune in sports, and I'm not the only one.
Mhm.
All of their friends do as well. So sports are extremely important to people. And I
What-
hate to put down music in clubs because they are as well.
Well, that's not even something, we're not even talking about the
I know,
extra
I know.
costs.
We're not even into that part.
We didn't get even into the band costs
Your
yet.
TSA went up tremendously this year, the students that are participating in that activity. It was wonderful to see.
I think people feel passionate about whatever their activity is,
Mhm.
and they're willing.
And they give for their kids.
Yes, they do. They
You know,
are.
I'm sure you guys all do too. You cut other things so that your kids can have
Yeah.
what
Mm-hmm.
you think betters them.
I was one of those 8 people that reached the $500 max
There
last
you
year, but it wasn't.
You're a statistic.
It wasn't $500 max. Both of them went to their.
That's just the start.
their championship down in Wildwood.
Yeah.
They got first place again. It was great, but thankfully my daughter graduated.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was
I hit the
all
max
those
too
costs
this
for the
year.
whole trip times 2.
Yep.
So yeah, it was
And I
well
think
over
you'd be
2,000.
surprised from the high school
I
standpoint what
think you
parents
would
will
too.
pay.
I think so,
We
too.
have parents who are paying $2,000, $3,000 to take their kids to a tournament on the weekend.
Absolutely.
In Ohio.
Yeah.
Right.
We were in Georgia this
When
year.
when
We
they're
were
11
in
years
Georgia,
old.
we were
I
in
mean,
Tennessee,
so
we
I
were
think
in
that high school
Maryland.
parents might dig into their middle school.
Yeah, middle
Right.
school not
But
so
high
much
school,
because a
I
lot of
think
those
they'll
kids are
dig.
still feeling out.
I don't know that they'll dig $800.
Right.
But
Right.
There's some
I think high school, middle school is 2 different levels, and when you're a parent of a high schooler, you do think a little bit differently on how, because you're thinking of college.
Right,
Parents
and they're
parents will
focused
leave
at
work
that
early to
point
go
on their
watch their 8th
sports.
grader play a middle school sport. Parents will leave work early to
Yes.
watch their senior
Absolutely.
play an athletic event at school. That's the difference, I
Mhm.
think.
Well, it's interesting because we met with the folks, I think it was Berkshire Baseball and whatever the other baseball.
But Berkshire Baseball is pay to play, I guess it's not pay. That's a club team.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
But they use our facilities.
They do, yes.
And Amity's fields and
Yes.
stuff like that. And when I was talking with Tony Tucci, I guess he was involved in that, he was saying, $750 for a weekend tournament.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's nothing.
Per student.
There's nothing. There's nothing. And that's why.
And
I
they-
heard
they
that
have
for
them all
volleyball.
summer long.
Not per student, per team. It says $750 fee for a team to enter the tournaments. I know
Okay,
because we
well,
play
maybe
in
that-
some of them. But you're talking about playing, yeah, you pay $2,000 for your kids to play for a season when you go to all the
We have
tournaments
parents
and
who
you
pay
travel.
$2,000 for a weekend.
Yeah.
A weekend.
Right.
You know, we have parents who fly. I mean, I think it's crazy. Don't-
Right, well, that's
I
not.
think-
Okay.
So anyway, I think that's.
So,
I mean, let me just, you represent the group, correct?
Yeah.
The sports.
Mike, found it.
I mean,
I'll send it to you.
what are you guys, as an organization, thinking and doing and
You weren't
planning
copying.
or in
So here it
terms
comes.
of what you.
But here it is.
What steps is the Boosters Club taking?
Well, we're waiting a lot to hear.
Just my persistence
you know,
paid off here.
what you guys are doing. We realize that your budget, these are things that you have thrown out here. So in a bad, in the worst situation, we're going to cut all of sports. We're not running completely with it. We're gathering information from people to see what they would be willing to do. But I can tell you that people don't want to lose sports. They don't want to lose that from the district. They're worried about property rates. They're worried about what their kids are doing. Now all of a sudden we have all of these high school students after school, I think there's 78%, I think 78% of our students in high school are involved in activities. I
Another percentage.
I want to say you said something about 78%, but don't quote me because I haven't gone back to check those facts.
I think your number, Mike, you said 900.
What are
900
students doing
and-
after school now?
Well, when you add in activities, sports, band, and everything, it's probably over 80% of the kids.
At high school?
And when you
Yeah,
throw
it's
in
middle
everything
school,
into
too.
the, I don't have the number,
Say 1,000 kids.
I'd say it's 8 out of 10 are involved in something.
Some activity or something.
It's very rare that they're not involved in something. And I always, not to get into an educational sideshow here, but because we've been focusing on facts and figures and information, but I always say it's what makes the American education experience what it is, that we do all of these other things. I even hate the word extra. I always like the word co, because I would submit to you that kids learn their leadership skills, their all of those skills that employers seek so desperately, more through their involvement in those things beyond the classroom and the book knowledge that they get, that they do in those things. That comes at a cost. It's not free to get that, but it is really, I think, what makes for good leaders in our society.
And do you also find that the students who are active in these things have higher grades? Because we have
Usually.
Not always, but I just think at the end of the day,
it's goal oriented.
they grow as human beings. It's just part of human growth and development. And I think involvement in those activities, that's why I think we have invested in them for the many, many decades. This isn't new in American society.
Right.
And it's not unique to public schools.
Clearly, there's a correlation between participation in extracurricular activities and performance in the classroom, because we do have policies that say that if you're not performing, then you don't participate anymore. And so kids are motivated to do well on their tests and their quizzes so they can continue to do the things that they enjoy to do. So they are important. Nobody discounts, I think, that they're important.
But even in private schools, where obviously you're a product of the, I'm sure, I know we used to compete with the Hill School.
Sure.
They have a full extracurricular program.
Right.
I don't know if they call it extracurricular, but you look at your good private schools, they also have
Right.
great programs that go above and beyond the education that they provide their students
Right.
in the four walls of the classroom. So that's a universal tenet of American education, no matter whether it's public or private.
Actually, you're required to play a sport.
Bingo. They know the value of
You
it.
don't have a choice.
Right.
It's not PE. You go play a sport, period.
Well, one of the things that sports boosters did bring us, we did bring the Market Street idea at the last meeting.
Right.
Last month. So that was
And-
one of the things that we have looked into as a way to generate revenue.
Yeah.
We-
Well, as luck
Dr.
would have it, we
Otto.
can segue into that because we could probably go all night with this. I don't know what else you wanted to do with item one before we leave it behind.
I just wanted
Still brainstorming.
I just wanted to find out if it was even an option to start pulling it all apart, to start looking at middle school sports being taken, maybe to Amity AC. Is that a possibility? Trying to kind of move things around.
Well, I probably
see
need
how
to
the
go
board-
do some
how-
legal research.
Yeah,
we
I think there's
feel-
a lot of things you have to figure out with that, but it's
Right.
always an option.
But is it an option? I mean,
We're brainstorming.
Your name's Karen?
Yes.
All right, you're representing the Amity AC?
Yes.
Okay. Do you
She's
think
also
you're-
on our education foundation.
yeah.
Okay. Nice to meet you. Do you feel that your organization could pick up middle school
We're
sports?
more than willing to pick up middle school sports.
All of them,
No.
Karen, or pick up what is not covered under another para?
We would prefer to pick up what's not covered, only because football is not our expertise. We don't have
We don't have
football.
Right,
We
you
don't
don't have
sponsor
equipment,
football.
you
I
don't
don't know
have-
football.
Right.
Yeah, because everything I've heard
Yeah.
from people I know that have their kids in sports and they do that, they think it's a well-run organization and they think their opinion is they could do it.
Right.
And
Oh,
it's
we could do it. It's just like I said, we would be more comfortable if the other organizations would pick up their sports, or we could do it together, because like I said, we don't have the baseball expertise, we don't have football expertise. We know soccer, we know basketball, we can do volleyball, we can do track, we can do field hockey. Keep forgetting field hockey.
I think we might want to explore the possibility of, one of the things that I would recommend as your superintendent is not to divest yourself totally of this and enter into a cooperative arrangement with someone where maybe most of the financial burden is still on someone else, but the administrative burden rests with us so that we can help them run it and do the things.
I think we'd have to keep an athletic facility.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Those kind of things. I think
Right.
we need to find some, I don't even want to say middle ground, because obviously we would ask whatever partner to fund a big chunk of, the program. Not fund it, but find a way to make it happen.
Does Michelle currently does the lacrosse and tennis?
Yes.
She has oversight for
So I
them.
don't think it's any different.
Yes, she
I
does.
mean, we're just saying, instead of doing 2 sports, you're now going to do 8.
And I would think at minimum, you have to figure out what overhead costs the district doesn't want anymore. And it sounds to me like it's leaning toward the coaches. The coaches, the travel, the equipment.
Transportation, too.
Right, that's what I said, coaches, travel, the equipment, that kind of thing, that maybe the burden that's now on the district, and we're going to have to get our team of people together, maybe form some kind of committee for some kind of cooperative arrangement, and go from there, because that.
Coaches too, see if the coaches are willing to take.
Well, there are some legal questions that I don't even want to talk about publicly until I have more information, so that I don't put something on the table that comes back to haunt me. But I'm sure there are legal issues that need to be examined and discussed. And frankly, we need to have a conversation with PIAA, because we may be breaking new ground in the state of Pennsylvania with something like this. So I'm sure there's ways to get it done. I just want to make sure that, in May when we say, yeah, we're going to do this, oops, we forgot that question.
Well, right.
Yeah.
Talk to the coaching staff.
So
And-
what on the checklist do you guys get in touch with?
Oh, we'll start the conversation.
Brian Subers.
Yeah.
Well, Goose would have been here tonight, but she had an event, so
Right.
she would have heard a lot of
Talk to
this.
Brian Subers, talk to PIAA, get their feedback on a transition of moving, let's say, middle school sports to an outside organization, or we have to terminate it,
Right.
terminating it, and then, what assistance can we provide
Right.
in terms of organizational assistance and so on and so forth to that organization, in order to provide
Right.
provide support in the same manner that we do tennis and lacrosse, quite frankly. And I think we just use those as a model.
And in your dual role being on the foundation, maybe this is one of the major fundraising efforts the foundation wants to get on board with, to give them a project, because I know we're getting ready to look at hiring our executive director, so we have the people in place now to start getting things done. So maybe that's something we need to carry this conversation to the Ed Foundation tomorrow.
Could the boosters help us? I don't know whether it's, I think at some point we need to have the Blazer Youth football and the baseball organizations.
I know Michelle
part of
reached
this
out to
dialogue,
them, and I think
so-
she got positive responses. I think the only question was football, only because I believe they're changing their committee, and the outgoing chair didn't want to speak for the incoming chair, but felt very confident that it wouldn't be a problem.
So there's an issue with age though, yes, I know she has reached out, and I'm sure that we can put together a committee. I want to say for some reason there was an issue with football, but
Yeah.
don't quote me on that, because that was like hearsay through the grapevine, so.
Because I think it would be, from this committee's perspective, and the board's perspective, and sooner or later the committee has to vet this out and then come to the board with some recommendations, get some feedback from the board. The other 9 people say, all right, well, yeah, we like where you guys are going, we just keep going, right? Because what they don't want to do is go so far down a rabbit hole and then come to the board says, we don't like what you're going with that.
Right.
And so, to the degree that we can decide what pieces are going, or potentially could go, and what pieces are still sort of hanging out there as, that are questions, we can start to identify those things, and the ones that we know that people can kind of come to some sort of consensus that, yeah, okay, let's pursue that. People can start working on that, right? And then those pieces are sort of still out there. We can identify what those are and figure out what the solution may be for those activities. I think that would be a good way to proceed.
That's pretty much why I wanted to bring it up tonight and see what
Well,
the thoughts were about it.
I
so that
have a
we
good
can
handle
start
on the
putting a-
questions. I mean, I don't even have to write them down.
First, if it can be done.
Well,
It can be done,
Right.
there are just, I have issues with the administration of the program. That's one. Somebody has to administer this program.
Yes.
No
Well,
offense,
that's-
it's not going to be the superintendent directly, or you. We need a person. It's the same thing we've always had.
If if we're just talking about middle school to start,
Right, middle school,
as an example, we still have to have an athletic facility
Right.
for the high
Right.
school. So I think that issue of administrative,
Well, just the whole administrative
is a
issue.
moot.
right now,
Michelle will still be here.
Right.
right,
We still have an athletic facilitator, we still have a trainer, we
Right.
still have probably a secretary.
right,
We still have all those costs.
Right.
And they would still be doing the same thing.
Right. Right.
Just, we don't have the ownership of it anymore, we don't have the employment contracts anymore. That's the only difference.
Right.
And the payment goes somewhere else. It's not us collecting fees and dues for those sports anymore. It's an outside organization collecting
Right,
fees.
'cause they would pay the registration fee.
Well, I'll start
right.
getting
And
hold
that's
of
just for middle
CIAA
school.
and,
Well, I think that's
well, I think
Start
you
of
use
it.
that as your pilot. Because if we
Yeah.
have to take this to the high school level, you've already piloted at the middle school. So I'll get started on the questions. I think they're pretty clear.
So that was my point A, number one, so,
I can jump to school media. We've had a little delay with the school media organization in that Brian Subers did send out, I forwarded the contract to the committee, that he had doctored up in a letter that showed the things that he expected them to put in their contract. I don't want to be negative, but they seem to be stalling a little bit, and you can chime in with an email and a contact I made today. They're heading into phase 2 of some program. I don't really know what it means. The gentleman that I spoke to at school media said they're going off on some technology branch. Whether that means they're going to start trying to branch out into doing website advertising, I don't know. He was not very explicit.
yeah, I got that too.
So I made him put that in writing to me today.
Yeah.
That's why I said that. So I said, would you just please categorize your conversation with me in writing so I have it and I can share it with the board. So there's not much. He said he'd get back to us next month. We have done our due diligence with trying to reach out to them, so I don't know what else we can do. I don't know how interested they are in wanting to do business with us, frankly. More positive feedback on the Market Street Sports Group. I talked to Jeff Bertoni today. If the committee's okay with it, took the liberty to invite him to our next Revenue Enhancement Committee meeting. He said he'd be more than happy to come out. So rather than go into a lot of what they offer, I did do we had about a 20-minute conversation. They are actually involved with doing a lot of advertisement for PIAA, for a lot of Lancaster County schools. Well, I want to say a lot. They're working with 8 school districts. He said he even talked about the possibility of something like this becoming the domain of the Ed Foundation, where they would be the ones that would work with this organization and help raise money. He did say that Wilson School District used to work with them fairly extensively, but Wilson had a change in leadership, i.e. the superintendent. They decided to take it in-house. They hired their own. Wilson went ahead and took the money that they were involved with this, I think, and they actually have a PR director now who runs their advertisement program. So they hired their own person. So they have it in-house. They're still trying to raise money that way, but they ended their contract. And he did say amicably, and he did say they're also working with Governor Mifflin, but he said they've only been able to secure one advertiser for Mifflin at this point, and that's Dairy Queen. And he was blunt. He said the down economy, he says the people aren't out there. I did say to him that I said, well, you need to come to the Daniel Boone community. We can give you some names of some people, and maybe they'll be willing to want to enter into some advertising arrangements. So he's going to come here. I think we should let him come. I sent out a copy of just a summary of what they do, but he was very positive in that he would be willing to come out and share with us. He did say one thing. He had heard of school media, and he said we could be working at cross purposes. He said, so we may have to work out whether we want to go school media or Market
Right.
Street, so that they are definitely not identical, but very, very parallel organizations doing kind of the same thing and potentially competing for the same dollar. So school media is on hold until we hear from them.
Did he say how many other school districts they're working with?
Market Street,
Yeah,
8.
they're working with 8 school districts.
Mm-hmm. Or they have worked with 8 over their time.
Yeah, it seemed to me that if I was a marketer and I had 8, potentially 9 school districts, that, you don't just go to one organization and say, we're gonna, you should advertise at Governor Mifflin. You go to them and say, we're gonna give you an opportunity to advertise at 9 school districts. How does that sound to you?
He said a lot of it was
You work out some
localized.
sort of sharing agreement amongst the schools for the total amount of revenue being
Yeah,
generated.
I don't know a lot about that business, but the one thing that he says is it's very difficult, because you get into local areas and you get a lot of, in other words, Wilson's competing with the same people Mifflin's competing with, and we would be competing with the same Dairy Queen that's in Exeter, but it's up at the top of Lincoln Road.
Yeah,
And
but I'm saying that Dairy Queen isn't willing to advertise because they don't think that they're gonna get the market exposure.
But Dairy Queens are owned by individuals,
Individual.
so it's that individual
I
person
get it.
who would
Well, the,
Yeah, no, I get
advertise in
it.
their
But
marketplace.
Dairy Queen, if I'm a proprietor of Dairy Queen, I may be willing to, where before I wasn't willing to advertise, I may be now willing to advertise with 5 other Dairy Queen owners and put a Dairy Queen ad out there, right? That's going to appeal to the greater Reading marketplace, so people are thinking about Dairy Queen in general when they're driving around.
well,
right?
They do, but then they have to form that alliance with.
I think those are all good questions. I think when he,
No, I got it. I understand it. But I'm just saying that,
but the
if you're worried about
contract,
people not advertising at all, one of the ways is you create a greater market for them, and you create greater synergies for them to get their brand out there.
well, if you want him to come, those are probably all good questions for him. I honestly can't answer them.
well, the school media, one of the reasons why I want to kind of make the school, finish up with them first is because we wanted to change their contract and see how willing they were to change their contract. Now, if the Market Street has the same type of contract, it's going to lock you into so many years, and once again, we might use the contract that we sent to school media. Now we can send it to Market Street and see if they're more willing to work with us.
I heard positive comments about working with Market Street once they contracted with you. They did deliver what they just can't guarantee advertisers. But Wilson was actually very happy with the response, and the work that they did. She said they worked hard. They did what they said they would do. They just, the economy's hurt people wanting to invest money in advertising. So, if you're up for that, I think we could invite.
I think we should.
He said he'd be willing. They're only over in, I don't know it's over in Lancaster County. So it's
Why am I missing or something?
no. They're in Lancaster County.
They started.
Yeah, Market Street Sports Group. You can go on. They're on the website, and I actually sent a copy of part of their web page to the committee. I would highly recommend bringing them out. It doesn't cost us anything. So, and it'll give us a nice agenda for the next meeting.
I would tell him to bring a copy of their sample contract.
Yeah, that's what.
No, I'll make contact with him.
And have him email that ahead of time so that people have an opportunity to look at this stuff before he gets here, so that they can start asking him questions.
Yeah, because that's what it all came down to, is the contract, how much space they were going to use, where they were going to do it. Ken had to give them a plan. There was a lot more than just talking to them.
Yeah, I don't think Market Street operates in that same realm as school media, but he was aware of them, so he knew who they were. So that's all.
Yeah, I would like to meet.
Yeah,
I would like to meet them.
Okay, we'll bring him out. Bring him out to the next meeting.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to read in too much if Brian redlined their contract with changes or addendums. I probably spend 30% of my week discussing indemnification clauses, continental shelf responsibilities, all this legal stuff, and whenever you have to get anything changed in our insurance, it's a task. It usually
It's
takes several
time-consuming,
weeks, and
yeah.
we have teams of lawyers of Hubble that sit around and do nothing but that. So maybe with a small outfit, changing the language in there may not be such a big deal to us, but it
Right.
may be to them.
Right.
So I don't know that that's necessarily.
No, I wouldn't read
a
much
negative
into
thing
it.
for
Exactly. I'll just leave that comment off the table. It is what it is.
And then number 5, Dr. Otto had brought up today about the facilities use form processing fee. This was something brought up a year ago about charging a fee just to process the application for when people want to use the facility.
It's a nominal. You know what? What spurred me on? I'm sitting in my office, as I do, most days, and sign off on all these forms, as I sign 40 forms a day, whatever they might be, and I had a pack of facilities forms that I'm signing and signing. And every one of them, we're not collecting any money, we're not collecting any money, we're not collecting any money. But the facility's getting used, and it's for this group, and it's for that group. And I'm looking at some of these groups, and I'm saying, I know this group's making some money. I know they're doing something, but because they're in that category where we don't really, we're getting nothing. I mean, zero. And I'm not saying you slap $100 user fee on there, but I mean, any place you go, it's like shipping and handling. It's $25. It's this, it's that. And if we handle 100 forms a year or 200 forms a year, it could be $5,000.
I figured that out last year, and it was like a $5,000, $7,000.
I mean, if it was $500, I would say, so what?
We did a lot of forms.
Anytime you get to $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, that helps. That's 2 bus trips, or 3 more weeks of an activity, or whatever it might be. So I'm just throwing it out there for discussion. I mean, and I would say, and I'll take a group like, say they want to use facility for, say it would be for a car wash to raise money for, they're raising money with that car wash. We're asking for $25 of it. Say we would have a flat fee for filling out that form. $25. Doesn't sound like a lot, but when you do 200 forms a year, it starts that up.
There's an opportunity cost that has to be considered. That's usually why most companies charge an application fee. That's because you just spend an hour of your day or whatever it is signing off on these.
Well, I'm not the only one that looks at it.
No.
One person looks at the cost, another person looks at this.
Right, that's what I'm saying. 10 people touch that piece of paper, filing it, moving it around, processing it, and at the end of the day, that's 10 people that could have been doing something else that we're paying them to do. So there is a cost to the school district to
It's
process
overhead.
things and
Yeah.
There's an overhead cost.
Charge a de minimis fee for that. I don't think there's anything.
Well, again, as these things go, it will be, again, I can imagine the phone ringing a few times. What do you mean I got to pay $25 just to touch this form? Well, times have changed.
Yeah.
But I would assume that we should at least, I don't know, put that in a policy or in an administrative regulation to say, because actually I think the facilities use form is attached to the facilities use policy. So we could bring that back as a rewrite in the policy committee and handle it that way, and then make it official district business to say, this is, because we always mail that policy out to groups when they fill out those forms, or at least they're given access to the facilities use. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean,
Well,
that's
if
just,
you have like an organization, just say like the Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, okay, they say they want to have a regular meeting throughout the year at your facility. Now, would you make them fill out that form every single time? Or is it just one time for
No, in other words, like any time you have to fill out the form, it's 25. So if you have 15 meetings as a result of filling out the form one time, you're not going to take 15 times 25. I think that would be ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm saying a processing fee. Whenever we have to process something new, it's $25 or whatever amount. I'm just throwing that out there as a.
I understand.
It could be. You could say, well, just do 10, or just somebody might say do 50. I think you get to a point where it gets prohibitive.
Last year, I think I went 35.
Oh, you were at 35, so I knocked you down. I think at the end of the day, people will just get used to it, but I think we're leaving some money on the table if we don't access it.
Look, every municipality you deal with charges you a fee.
An application fee
I
for
don't care what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you know what? You apply to a college, every time you turn in an application, they want $75 for the registrar to stamp it received.
And you don't get it back if
And you
you're
don't get it
denied.
back. That's right. If you don't get in, you don't get it back. So I would like to just make an estimate, if you're interested in exploring this, of what we really think the money would be and how many forms we actually process. I was just sitting there and I went, I get this pack of this, I get my mail every day. I get the envelope, my facilities use form. By the time I was done with 4, and we were only charging one group because they fell into the category of charging, but the other forms, I mean, we might want to look at some exceptions for groups that have a hardship or aren't really raising any money or aren't making money as a result of their, who was the local politician, when Dave Maloney wanted to come and use the auditorium to have a meeting about taxes. maybe we say, okay, that's political service, that we waive the fee then, because it's not a moneymaker for anybody. It's a forum. Maybe we have a waiver there, but anybody that's going to make money coming into our facility where we have to have somebody clean up afterwards, turn on the lights, have security, have an insurance risk, blah, 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 I don't think it's asking too much to put a $25 fee on it. That's just me.
I don't either.
So maybe the way we approach this is, in our next policy committee meeting, you're going to see a policy out of sequence. We'll bring that one back and put it on for review. Because that's the way I think procedurally we have to approach it. So if you want me to, if we want to take this back to the policy committee for discussion, that's where it should head next.
I think it's a good idea.
Work? All right, that's
Yeah.
what we'll do. I don't have anything else.
I don't either. Anyone have
Just one question.
anything else?
The Rage, weren't they leasing our stadium for soccer?
They're going to give us a $10,000 flat fee.
Is that one season?
That's 1 year.
1 year.
It's annual.
And when are they making that payment?
Actually, Mrs. Torsia has the contract from them now. We're going to send it over to Subers to make sure it meets our needs. And I think they're also going to offer some kind of, Mary Beth was telling me today, they're going to give Daniel Boone soccer players some kind of special workshop or something too as part of it. That's a good arrangement.
So I'm just curious, when does that officially, that season start on that contract?
I think it's impending. It's once we get the paperwork done, it'll start.
Is part of the contract, is it say April 1st?
Honestly, I haven't.
July 17th? Is it?
I haven't looked at it yet. I think it's ready to go though. I don't think we're going to be waiting 4 more months to get started with them. I think their contract with Tulpehocken is running out, or has just about run out now.
I mean, I would encourage Subers to put that at the top of the pile, because the sooner we can count that as revenue, the easier it is for the school district then to say, okay, well, we're going to allocate that towards sports, let's say, and that's $10,000 less that we have to worry about in terms of covering, in terms of our budget discussion.
Right.
The longer that stays on the bottom of his pile.
No, I think I think the contract's pretty. It looks like just a couple. I don't think it's anything earth-shattering. I mean, they had a model with Tulpehocken that they approved.
Yeah,
so.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, when it comes to contracts, you want to get these things signed quickly so they don't go somewhere else.
No, I think they're committed to us. I think we're good.
Until another school district offers a $50 deal.
Well, luckily we're using the power of a friendly relationship that Mrs. Torsia has with that.
I just found when I had this form
Oh, you found
looked
it from
at
last year?
before. It's from January of 2009 to December 2011. We processed 328 usage forms.
That's $7,500.
Well, if I
we
wanted
left
to
on the
charge
table.
35, so that was
So yours is almost 10,000.
Well, it was 11,480.
See how quick I am at math?
25 is about it. 35 is an odd number.
25. I just put 35.
We'll take it off of the pressure off of her. Policy committee will take this over.
Yeah, that's
now.
fine. I just thought that looked.
Well, actually, we're going to want that for policy committee.
I had that. I knew I had it
Just
somewhere.
send it back to me for policy committee.
That's about 25.
Well, I mean, if you're taking that number, you take this Rage contract, that's $20,000. We just
Starts that up.
Right there.
found.
We don't like 35.
Yes. Yes.
And why 35?
I always say you just start low with the fee, and then if it has to go up, it can go up. If you start too high, then you can't raise it.
Will Red City be back? The Red City Outlaws? They used the stadium last year? Or you-
That was an arrangement that we had for this year.
The Red City, it's a semi-pro football team, but I think they played 8 games?
Yes, they paid for the use of the stadium. I forget
Has
what.
anybody called them, see if they can,
They're coming back.
we can sign them up for
That's
next fall?
we'd have to ask Mr. Potts that. That was his project.
Put that on the tickler file of things
Yep.
to do, because
I
quite
took
frankly,
into those games, they were actually very entertaining. You
I
had a
was
wide
at
gamut
about
of,
5 of those games. They
you
were
had wide
really
gamut of
entertaining.
capability
Yeah,
in there.
yeah, I heard some stories about those
Were you
games.
at the one where there was a fight on the field and the wives had to come out and break it
No, I
up?
didn't see that one.
And we don't want to hear about that.
Probably
That was
best
a
I
fun
did. It's probably best I
We have the press here. We don't want to hear about fights.
Oh, no. Oh, that was
It was
wonderful.
an outside group.
I think that was another game I was attending, not the Boone
I was
game.
at Wilson.
That wasn't Wilson.
Yeah, no, please. They've had enough trouble.
Kill the recording.
Yeah, time to adjourn.
Okay.
yeah, I would put that on the agenda, because quite frankly, we need to be aggressive about going out there and soliciting this type use. And the more people that are using our facility that are outside, it just further, it makes it easier than to market the facility to others. You can say, oh, well, you know, yeah, so-and-so and so-and-so is using our facility.
Well, this 10 grand for the Rage Soccer Club was just a stroke of luck. I'm just so glad that happened. That was nice. 10
Did
grand.
they play here over the summer or sometime last spring?
No, they were Tulpahawken.
There's somebody.
No, someone came.
That's a semi-pro team. This is the local youth, the county like youth soccer. I mean,
I'm just saying that somebody ought to be keeping a tally of which teams are playing here, and ought to be reaching back out to them. I mean, put that on Michelle Goss' to-do list, but she ought to be calling up these outside organizations from Atlantic City or wherever and saying, hey, we really enjoyed having you here. Are you coming back?
Right, yeah.
Maybe you can send an email to Michelle.
Find out who's coming back.
Plenty of homework from that.
Okay.
Yeah, tell her to get on the horn and start calling these organizations.
She has a lot of connections. We can get
I was
those
just
things
saying,
answered.
especially the ones that have already been here.
Right.
Had a good experience.
Well, we have a nice enough stadium. They like using our facility.
I was at a lot of games. They played on Sunday afternoons. I think there was one Saturday night game because the Boosters Clubs actually were able to run the set bar.
Right. That was part of the agreement.
And then Music Boosters and Sports Boosters, we were able to we didn't make a ton, but it was worth.
Hey, you start small, and maybe somebody else hears about them, and
it was absolutely worth being there. The field wasn't being used anyway, so it was great.
Okay. All right, this meeting is adjourned at 8:30.
thank you all for coming.
Thank you.